Here in the Apalachicola Bay, we have what's called the Chrysostrea virginica, also known as the eastern oyster. One important thing to know about these oysters is that they're filter feeders, meaning they draw water over their gills through tiny hairs called cilia. This removes nutrients, algae, and other sediments that cause eutrophication, a process which may be detrimental to many ecosystems.
Okay, go.
Beyond this, oysters are known as bivalves, meaning that they're mollusks with two shells. Here we find the hinge for both the shells. This one's missing, obviously. But inside these shells are the oyster's organs. The first we'll look at is the adductor muscles, holding the two shells together. The second are the gills. Here you can see the cilia. Thirdly is the digestive tract. Speaking of which,
a variety of ecosystem services are provided by oyster reefs. Acting as a habitat, the reefs provide refuge, nesting in nursery grounds, and feeding and foraging sites. Additionally, the oyster shells provide a hard attachment site for other sessile organisms. As suspension feeders, oysters filter the water column, which reduces turbidity and allows greater light penetration to seagrasses and macroalgae of the benthos. After feeding, oysters eject biodeposits that sink into the sediment and provide nutrients that become available for vegetation or microbial-mediated denitrification. Therefore, oysters play a role in removing excess nitrogen and combating eutrophication. Also, oysters contribute to the ecosystem's carbon budget as organic matter is removed from the water column and deposited in the benthos. Oysters also use calcium carbonate in the construction of their shells. Oyster reefs act as a breakwater, attenuating waves and providing erosion control. This protects vegetation habitats like marshes and seagrasses, as well as shorelines by stabilizing banks.
There may be other industries in Apalachicola, but the only one you hear about is oystering. The Apalachicola oyster industry is a $134 million oyster industry, and 90% of Florida oysters come from Apalachicola Bay. Also including 10% of U.S. oysters are from Apalachicola. The way that they harvest oysters in Apalachicola is with oyster tongs. This is a less destructive method of harvesting than dredging and brings up a cleaner product. There are two public oyster bars in Apalachicola Bay, Cat Point and Dry Bar, and they are closed and open periodically to allow for increased recruitment. After tonging, the oysters are processed at a seafood processing house, such as Boss Oyster, 13 Mile Seafood, and Levin Seafood, which are all in Apalachicola. After processing, they're shipped to restaurants, cruise lines, and casinos where consumers enjoy the oysters, sometimes even cooked in champagne and cream, or just raw. They're delicious. Now the industry is in trouble due to overharvesting and drought.
The Flint and Chattahoochee rivers converge at the Florida-Georgia border to form the Apalachicola, which flows down into the Gulf, bringing nutrients and fresh water to the oysters here. Anthropogenic impacts have taken a toll on the oysters in recent decades. Overdevelopment, pollution, and agricultural and stormwater runoff have reduced water quality. There are also concerns about the effects of the recent BP oil spill. However, the primary threat to Apalachicola's oysters is from reduced freshwater flows owing to overconsumption of water resources in the city of Atlanta. Several states, including Florida, have sued the state of Georgia over water rights to the ACF basin, but there is no resolution in sight, and last fall, Governor Scott declared a disaster area, making the region eligible to receive federal funds for recovery.